Hello, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to use and get started, get set up using Flareware. Now, Flareware is a brand new software that literally just came out as you're seeing this. So obviously I'm going to show this software off in this video. So if you want to just see what this is, then you can just watch the rest of this video. But Flareware is a software that runs on Mac and Windows. It is a desktop software. It is a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, and it basically is a software for making ridiculously pretty and cool stars, flares, laser beams, orbs, sources of light, lighting effects, that type of thing, with the aim of obviously taking those assets that you create in Flareware and moving them into your own process, wherever that may be. A big use case for this would be people who do photo manipulation, people who work on merchandise, people who might often find themselves painting in lighting or just adding lighting effects to an image in software like Photoshop or Procreate. Now, here it is on my desktop. When you get Flareware, you will get a PDF guide on how to actually install and activate and everything like that. You need to follow the steps exactly as they are in that video, so I'm not going to go over that here. Obviously, I've already got Flareware activated, so I'm just going to open that up now. So once you're through that guide, this is what you'll see. For me, it's quite late here and my eyes are tired, so the first thing I'm going to do is just go to theme and change my Flareware theme to funeral, which is just the dark mode name that I made. You can go for all these other cool sort of 2000s, 2010s inspired themes, but we've just got one dark mode theme called funeral and another dark mode theme called infrared for now, if you want to give your eyes a bit of a rest. So first things first, you've got your flare here. You can choose a flare type at the top right. So there's plenty to start with in version 1. I think there's 21 or 22 in this. The first one that will load will be the anamorphic star flare, and you can see here that each flare has a version number of its own. So if you know me and if you've been watching this channel, you know I cannot help myself but update things and work on things. I've done all the Ditherboy content you've seen, and all the Ditherboy stuff that's gone up on this channel has gone up while I was learning about making this and in the process of making this. So I'll still have time to, it's not like I have to find a time to work on another software here. I've already been working on this the whole time. So very likely that the same thing happens here to Flareware, where we update it over time and we take user feedback and stuff like that. So you might have seen just there, I was messing with this because it's just too fun not to mess with, basically. So it is pretty straightforward. If you are experienced with design software, you'll pick this up pretty quickly. But essentially, every flare type has its own set of controls, and those controls change depending on what flare you're using, because the flares, obviously, they're all set up differently. So for example, a flare that isn't really a flare, but it's just too cool not to make, this one called Offset Eclipse. This one is obviously not going to be able to use the same controls as the cross star flare because they're two completely different shapes. So obviously just bear in mind that the controls that you have available here for every flare generally will be the flare scale, the render mode, which I'll talk about in a minute. You have this show export overlay, which just basically helps you scale your flare appropriately. Obviously, you can go all the way in if you are wanting to just use the flare as like artwork rather than as an actual asset. But the goal with flare scale is to make sure that your flare fits in the box so that there's no hard edge on the here or where there should be light passing through, basically. So you can use show export overlay if you want. I'm going to turn it off for this video. And then generally every flare here, or most of the flares here, have a core effect, and beyond that it's all sort of bespoke to whichever flare you're editing. Now, viewport and rendering here, you will see you can choose between radiant render mode or realistic render mode. Now, put simply, if you use radiant mode, you will at times get a graying or a dimming of color on the edge of your flare. So when things fade out, if I load in a more complex flare here, like radial burst, so as things fade out, when you've got like a really cool, intense burst of light going on, it's nice to blend out the color as well. And it gives the effect, the reason I named it radiant, it gives the color and the core of the flare just a more radiant look, a more brilliant or a more glowing look, basically. But the result of that is that you can sometimes get this graying on the outer sort of edges of the fade, on the flare, on the star, on whatever it is you're working on. So obviously that's not ideal if you are looking to use a flare on a light background or on a subject, on a person, or just on a design that already exists. So to combat that, we added realistic mode. Now on screen here, you might not really see much difference between radiant and realistic, but in a minute, if I just come to anamorphic star, which is my favorite flare, and I'm just going to go into radiant mode and I'm going to build up a flare now that will help me illustrate what I mean by radiant and realistic. But essentially, realistic gets rid of that color blending, which in my opinion makes the actual core of the flare look a little bit more boring, but essentially, yeah, just more grounded, more realistic. So here I've got a pretty cool flare. I'm just going to scale it down so it fits in the export overlay, and I'm going to go to export PNG. Before I do that, I'll just open Photoshop as well. Important to mention that Flareware is designed to not rely on any other software. You don't need to use Photoshop. I'm literally just using Photoshop to illustrate the difference here between radiant and realistic mode, just so you can get a better understanding. You don't need Photoshop to run Flareware. I just use Photoshop quite a lot. So just because it's just for a video, I'm going to export the 2048 by 2048 option, and you'll see here it's telling me my export mode is radiant. So that's my first export done, and then I'm going to switch to realistic, and I'm just going to export with the exact same settings and exact same size. And if I come into Photoshop now and just hide this background and pull both of these in, hopefully the first thing you notice is that these are real PNGs, no fake PNGs from Flareware ever. They are real PNGs with real transparency, so you're not going to have to try and mess around removing a background from these flares ever. But if I just keep that radiant flare on right now, you will see, if I keep that radiant flare on right now with a white background, you will see that this effect that appears gold in the middle, I'm zooming in here. So again, the flares are much higher quality than this. This document is only 1080 by 1080. But these lovely white values that sort of fade into gold from one of the tints that this flare has in Flareware, when these blend out with color in radiant mode, you get this graying, which doesn't matter really if we're using a black background, but not ideal if you're putting it on someone's face or jewelry or text or anything where you don't want to dim things. Now, my first thought would just be to change the blend mode to screen, and that way you will only blend in the light values, but that's not ideal when you're making standalone software. People should be able to use the software regardless. So we made realistic mode as well, and this way you do not get the graying. So you can see the realistic flare here. If I invert the background, the flare basically disappears because this flare doesn't have any graying. You can see a couple of blue streaks from where I tinted it blue. But yeah, essentially the render modes are, I mean, they're kind of blend modes, but they're blend modes mixed together, and mostly just for color. Now, when we added both of these here, it becomes pretty obvious pretty quickly that you would have different use cases for each of these. Like it's pretty reasonable to say that you might just want both flares. Now you can just export two of those if you want, but if you come here to save flare, which I'm not going to do for this because I've already got flares saved. But if you come here to save flare, you will be able to save the flare internally into Flareware, not on your computer's like asset folder, or not to export out just yet. When you save a flare, it goes into the collection. So up here at mode select, you can switch to collection mode. And I've already got loads here. When you install Flareware, if you like to get these exact ones that I've got here, they've all got silly names like Orbs of Doom, but you can just go to help and click sync collection. So if I clear my collection now, this will delete all my collected flares, but the app does come with some presets just to help you get started. So each of these, or most of these, will have some kind of little quick preset you can load into if you just want to see like what's possible with a flare. Now, if you want to very quickly populate your collection with the preset flares in the app, you can just come to sync collection and it'll re-render all your flares that you've saved import any new presets that you've saved, and fix any corrupted data in your collection. So I'm going to do this now. It says it'll take 3 minutes, but it won't take 3 minutes. But essentially, the point in the collection mode, I will show you in a minute exactly what the point is. But the point in collection mode is once a flare is collected, it is both editable still in the app and exportable in any mode that we add to the app. So in the future, if we add another render mode or if we add new features to the app, anything that you've already put in your collection will be immediately compatible with the new features, basically. So if you want to get a head start on stuff, if you want to be ready for if and when we update this app, then start filling up your collection with your own flares. So here's one called Offset Classic, which uses the simple star base flare. So I can export a realistic flare from this preset. I can export a radiant flare from this preset, or I can just go and edit it in create mode right where I left off. And that goes for any of these flares here. So the rainbow flare, edit in create mode, and it takes me there. And this is all editable again. You can pick up right where you left off. So like this one, warm rays, edit in create mode. Now, if you ever encounter an issue with your collection, that is why we made sync collection. So if you've collected a flare and for some reason just doesn't look right, or it's not quite how you remember it, you can always go and just resync your collection. Now, I'm not going to sit and go through every single one of these here, but there's so much fun to have just messing with these. And the way we've made this, where it is exporting you a true PNG file and you can collect the flares for editing later. In my opinion, if you are someone who does a lot of compositing in Photoshop, and if you're someone who is working on like merch that often has people on it, or if you do like typography work, I think this is a really, really cool tool to have in your creative arsenal. Not only just for like the usefulness of these assets, but also just because we designed this to be enjoyed by designers. It's already come with 5 really cool themes that I just love looking at, especially this bubblegum one. And we designed a little custom dial for this as well. Not many, you don't see many graphic design apps with a dial. Just something I noticed, so I wanted to make a dial. We made a cool app icon that isn't the star trope. Now, unfortunately, the star icon has been like hijacked by AI now. So yeah, I couldn't just use a star as the app icon. So we got a little mascot for Flareware that's going to appear in a future update, maybe in a new mode. But yeah, that's how to get started. That's how to begin using Flareware. If you've already got Flareware and you were watching this to learn how to get started, then thank you for your support. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do with this app in the future. If you're still thinking about it, or if you've got any questions, or if there is a feature that you would like to see added to Flareware, there is never a better time than right now to recommend it. So please let me know what you think. Everything related to Flareware will be right below this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.